Well, welcome back, everybody. We are glad to be with you again, and I've got another guest, which I'm super excited about. We're going to be talking today about knowing when to lead and when to manage, and there's a very specific reason we're going to talk about this topic, and it's going to be because my guest, John Harney, good friend of mine, has got a new book coming out we're going to talk about today. But let me give you a little bit of a backstory and a bio of him, and then we'll dig into this conversation. So, John is the founder of Courageous Coaching and author of Lead, Manage, Win, which is coming out right now this week. And he empowers people to transform themselves and their teams amidst life's greatest challenges. With a focus on relational intelligence and emotional resilience, John helps supervisors at all levels, from executives to frontline managers, master the art of knowing when to manage and when to lead. His interactive approach combines humor, real world insights, and proven frameworks that create immediate impact. Based in Dayton, Ohio, John delivers keynote presentations, executive coaching, and development programs that help audiences accept responsibility for their growth and become the people their organizations truly need. So, John, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Chris.
Man, this is exciting for me because I remember sitting in a coffee shop with you and you're like, "Hey, I'm writing a book." And I'm like, "No way." And you're like, "Hey, I'll send it to you what I've got so far and you can take a look." And it surprised me because I'm pretty sure you said before you would never write a book.
uh, yeah, I probably said that at one point. Yeah.
Famous last words for a lot of authors, you know.
Right. Yeah.
But no, so before we jump into actually the book and the core topic of what you're teaching in the book, give us a backstory of starting your business and publishing Lead Manage Win.
Wow. So backstory. I really my backstory goes back to like early in my career. So, early on I got my first big boy job and started working, and the thing that got me hired, the fact that I could get a lot of stuff done, ended up being the thing that got me fired. So in the first 4 years in my professional career, I got fired two and a half times. And I know that's complicated, but I got fired two and a half times. And again, it wasn't because I couldn't do the job. I was really good at execution. I got fired because I was what one leader, said to me, called me relationally bankrupt.
Mm,
And at that time, I didn't even know what that meant, because I thought being a great supervisor meant having all of the answers. And so every time someone came to me, I'd fix it. I'd tell them what to do. I'd move on. I was managing everything and leading nothing. And so you fast forward through, and that person was willing to say those hard things to me and help me begin to see what it was like to be on the other side of me.
mhm.
And I went through just a long period of learning and growing and becoming the person that I am today, or closer to that person. And so I did that for 12 years and tried to start a nonprofit and worked in an organization. And in 2023, when I was leaving an organization that I was working, at, my wife said, why don't you start that business that you've always talked about? And our youngest son was about to graduate. She's like, we have a lot less responsibility going home. We're not running around to, like you right now, running around to sporting events and doing
Yeah.
things. We just don't have that time. And I had supported her when she went back to school to get her master's degree, and she's like, I know you don't like school, so this can be your school of learning how to start a business and do this stuff. So uh, that's how it all came about.
So has it been the school of hard knocks along the way too?
Yeah, yeah. That's funny that you asked that, because we were just laughing about that before we started recording, right?
Yeah,
Yeah,
we said we need another
absolutely. This
episode to talk
right.
about all the dirty secrets of building a business and marketing, all the things that most people don't know what they're getting into, right?
Absolutely. We could do a very long form podcast on that one, you and
Yeah.
I.
We could probably get a few more people to join that conversation, have a
Yeah,
roundtable discussion. So,
yeah,
but no,
yeah.
so yeah, so I'm like I said, sitting down with you and you telling me you're going to write this book, and then the premise of the book really intrigued me. And so, this idea of leadership and management being addressed in kind of two different ways made me think about, why is leadership and management separated or compartmentalized or segregated in the workforce today, do you
Yeah.
think, and society?
Uh, I think it started, maybe the best I can tell, about 20 years ago, where this idea of being a leader became this elevated thing. And so a lot of the organizations that I work for, They're operations driven companies, so manufacturing, construction, and all the different types of construction, but they're very operations driven. And what happens, and I think this happens in a lot of organizations, someone's really good at getting the work done. They're
Mhm.
really good at doing the thing. And because of that, they get promoted and they get promoted into a supervisory role. And the first thing that they're told when they get promoted is that they need to learn how to lead, right? So they've been managing the tasks and the outcomes really well, and that has gotten them the promotion that they have. But now all of a sudden, they need to like switch gears and do this other thing. And the way that it's been put is like leadership is this higher calling, and management is this lower thing that really just frustrates people and runs people off. And like most things in life, there's a little bit of truth in there, but it's mixed with a lie. And the lie is that leadership is more important than management. They both carry a higher or they both carry a very high level of need in any type of workplace. You need to know how to lead and how to manage. And so that's where then the premise came for me that leadership and management are tools, not titles.
Mm. Yeah, that's powerful. So, what can people expect? They read your book and they're diving into this. What can they expect to be learning, and then what would they walk away with to start applying?
Yeah. Well, so I wrote this book very differently, and you know this because you were part of the formation of this from the very beginning. I didn't write it as a book that you read from cover to cover. I wrote it more like a manual. So it's written more as like if you were to take your car in to a company to get something repaired on it, they would look into the manual based off of what was happening,
Mhm.
and they would see, oh, here's the things that we should check, and they would start checking that stuff to figure out what needs to be repaired on your car. So, similarly, when it comes to your supervision of people, if there's a pain point that you're feeling, right in the introduction of the book, I write and I lay out what every chapter is, what you can learn inside of that chapter, and then each chapter stands alone for itself. So you
Okay.
could look in there and see, like, hey, I'm having trouble with, holding people accountable. And you could find that in, X chapter, I can learn about that. And then inside of that chapter, there will be um, challenges for you. There'll be things that you can do to learn that other side of the thing that maybe you're deficient in. And you can begin to like diagnose that and start to apply some of the things that I put in there to help turn around, this issue that you're seeing and that you're having.
Mm. So let's just assume somebody reads your book. Hopefully, lots of people read it, right? And then they start to apply these things. What what does their organization start to look like? What is the outcome? Like, let's say 6 months from now, if they implement these things consistently,
Yeah.
what do you see as the payoff of what that organization will experience?
Well, the thing that I guarantee, so I've been putting together this offer that goes along with this for like my business, and I'm calling it the supervisor boot camp. And one of the things that I'm guaranteeing to owners and operators, executives, those people up high in a company is that they'll start to get time back.
Mm,
From most of the companies that I've worked with, they get interrupted often from things flowing uphill to them. Let's just call it that, right?
yeah.
So things getting escalated back to them that a supervisor should not have to defer to an owner, to an executive, to an operator of a company. And based off the research that I've done, so far and what I've seen in the organizations that I've worked with is that owners and operators, executives, they can get back about 7.5 hours a week. So that's almost a day
Yeah.
that they can gain back from either safety issues because things haven't been clearly communicated, jobs being redone where they have to go back and then they have to talk to a company that they are doing work for,
Mhm.
where a job wasn't done properly, and so then they have to either take people off a job and send them back to one to get things done properly, um, or even just conflicts that happen, unnecessary conflicts, right? That
Mhm.
happen inside of uh, teams where people don't understand each other and they don't really seek to understand each other. They don't know how to even, do that because, again, communication is not very clear. And so once we clear up a lot of communication, we help people to understand like relational identities and how to navigate those. A lot of those people conflicts, a lot of that redone, a lot of the safety issues, a lot of those things just go away. And then the next thing these owners find out is that they're not getting called back into the mess. They're able to stay in the altitude that they're supposed to be in of thinking about the future of the company, of strategizing, of doing those things, which are very much leadership principles. They get to stay in that leadership zone because they've strengthened up that management, zone, whether it be middle to front line inside of their organizations.
Mm. So all that sounds great. So why would somebody actually resist implementing these things?
You have to admit there's something wrong, and as human beings, we're not really great at that. Uh, to say that we've messed something up, we don't like that, and there's a cost, right? There's a cost to doing that. Because you either have to go and say, hey, we've made some mistakes and we've got to try something different now, and so we're going to be implementing some new standards, and even just figuring out what those standards are. That's actually the first phase that I do with my supervisor boot camp. I sit down with the owners, the executives, the operators, and we just get clear on what does good supervision look like in your organization, and then we make sure everybody knows that.
Yeah.
And then I teach tools that surround those things. And then we end up with then sending those supervisors, those middle managers, those frontline managers to go and to use these tools to use the things that they have learned. And then I stay connected with them to just reinforce everything that they've said is what good supervision looks like in their organizations.
Yeah, it's really interesting because it sounds like what you're saying to that specifically is you've got to be willing to pay that upfront cost in order to have the long-term benefit. Is
For
that
sure.
right? Yeah.
For sure. For sure. Yeah. Um, I think it was my dad who said years and years ago that if you do hard things now, you get to do easy things later.
Mm,
And if you do easy things now, you have to do a lot of hard things later.
mm,
And I don't think there, and it's not really even worth the conversation. Like, no one's really at fault here. You and I both have started businesses and we're solopreneurs. And so we know how hard it is just as a solopreneur to
mm,
diagnose things and to make changes and to head in the direction that you're ultimately wanting to head. So imagine then in an organization where it's been going for years and it's been making it and it's been doing it to
mm,
start to stem that tide, to start to turn the ship back to that
mm,
true north. That can be a difficult thing, and I understand even why it's difficult for organizations to hire coaches, because really it's kind of an intimate thing. They've spent a long time putting a lot of blood, sweat, and tears into what they're doing, and then to bring somebody in who's going to diagnose, hey, you're off, you're off track a little bit here, and here's how we need to correct this, and I'm willing to come alongside of you. Like, they've got to put a lot of trust in people like you and I,
yeah.
that we're not going to steer them in the wrong direction, and that the place that we're ultimately want to take them is where they're wanting to go. We're just helping to identify the gap from where they are to where they want to be, and then we're
Mhm.
putting together a plan to get them there.
Mm. What's interesting is what I hear you saying, the word that does jump out at me, which is in your title of your company, is courage, right? It takes
Yeah.
courage to take a step forward and do this. It's not just courage, like on our end, to say the hard things as coaches and trainers, but it's also takes courage as leaders to own up to those challenges or those where you're falling short, the mistakes maybe being made, and saying, you know what, I haven't gotten this right, or we haven't gotten this right. So let's courageously address that and
Yeah.
really approach it. And I think that's a huge step. To me, I give kudos to leaders when they do it, right? Because it isn't
No,
easy.
yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. And you're right on. Courage is courage is something that cannot be overstated or overlooked when you're going into an organization, or anybody who steps out from a paycheck
Yeah.
into something where they're starting up something for themselves and they're putting their own livelihood on the line. It takes a lot of courage, and to admit that you're wrong, it really does take a lot of courage there as well, because we've all probably had an admission of wrong and a personal admission of guilt
Mhm.
been like misused against us.
Yeah.
And so that teaches us over time. Like, children, children aren't as standoffish of doing this because they've not experienced the things that we have as adults. We've gone through time, and it's probably 9 times out of 10 it turns out fine, but it's that one time or that those 2 times that things happen poorly, and they
Mhm.
cement into our minds that, man,
Mhm.
but what if this does go wrong? And we start
Mhm.
worrying about the what if based off of the 1 or 2 times that things have gone poorly in the past.
Yeah.
And then it keeps us, that fear keeps us away from this. And courage is not the absence of fear, it's the looking the fear in the eyes and still being willing to say, okay, I believe in what is being said. I see the truth that is there, the wisdom that is there. I discern that there's something wise for me, to
Mhm.
do in this moment. And so I'm going to have the discipline to take the step that I need to take to
Yeah.
get me, to get my organization, to get, my supervisors into the place where we can all just enjoy like
Yeah.
the work that we do, because work is a very major part of the human experience. Like we're all a part of work in one way or another. And so it's taking the courage to do that is a big step.
Now, I like what you're saying, like with having your supervisor boot camp and really trying to help people in those roles. It feels like that can be an overlooked segment of a company many times because a lot of leadership conferences, content out there is focused maybe at the ownership, the C-suite, senior
Right.
level type leader. Is that something that you do see or that you're trying to address as well?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. So if I'm understanding you, most leadership development things are set up for the executive or the owner
Yeah.
or the higher level like leader person that's in an organization. And even with those, a lot of those are conferences,
Hmm.
or they are like online systems that people go to implement. And there's not a lot of hands-on with it, and it doesn't span an amount of time that we've come to see just in like science, social science, that it takes a while to create new patterns of health in our lives, right?
Yeah.
They say it takes 21 days to implement a new habit.
Hmm.
So, uh, I'm trying to put something in place with these organizations that will reinforce what they learn, because there's a couple companies that I've worked for and they had sent their supervisors to like a 1 day conference that was specific to the type of work that they did. Well, if it was construction, they would send them to some kind of construction
Hmm.
symposium that would talk about things, but it was talk very vague, and it never got into like the minute details of the actual company where they were in. And like I said, there's 4 buckets where we lose money. And if you don't address all 4 of those, you might be missing something, with where you're losing time, where you're losing money, where you're losing the potential for capacity. And so knowing each company individually and what they're struggling with, for them, and building around that personally, and getting to
Hmm.
know even the supervisors personally, that's been something that it's very analog, but it's something that I think I've seen a lot of benefit in. And when I get done working with companies, they'll say, our supervisors, because I'll do like a feedback form or something, and
Hmm.
I'll hear from the supervisors that, yeah, we really enjoyed like the teaching sessions and things that you do with the entire group, but I really love the one-on-one time, because I do
Hmm.
one-on-ones with everybody in the organization,
Hmm.
and they get like 30 minutes to talk to me about specific situations that they're dealing with. And that's where we see the greatest growth happen.
Yeah. No, that's good because as you're talking, I'm thinking of I was doing a team retreat workshop just a couple years ago, and I remember some of the leaders they were saying, we've had the opportunity to go to some really great conferences, but if I'm honest,
Hmm.
my notebook's dusty on a shelf somewhere or in a drawer, and it's like they felt guilty because they're like, I haven't really revisited that, and it was really good, but that's what happens in the busyness of a lot of
Right.
days and organizations, right? So it sounds like what you're rolling out here in your book to help people are practical tools that if they just start implementing them on daily basis in situations, and I think that's one of the things, the term I believe that you use in your book, situational fluency, is that right?
Yeah, correct.
Talk
Correct.
to us about that for a minute because I think that'll really give people some perspective on how this concept of what you're rolling out in this book will really help them.
Yeah, I think it's something that most people understand. I just tried to put a word with it to help me so I wasn't explaining it every time. And so situational fluency just became like this idea of being fluent in understanding the situation that you're in.
Hmm.
And sometimes that situation is, task based or outcome based. And sometimes it's like human based, it's person
Hmm.
based. And when you understand what's really happening in front of you, then you can respond appropriately, and that's when you become situationally fluent. And so, just for instance, if something is more of a crisis mode
Hmm.
for an outcome that has to take place, that's going to require more management from you, right? You don't walk into a crisis and look around and say, "Hey, so what does everybody think? Let's
Right.
collaborate on some ideas." Like if something's on fire, you just start to manage it and you start to take care of it. If it's an opportunity for someone to grow and maybe the timeline is longer and there's not as much as that's at stake, that's an opportunity, to lead and to grow another person in your organization. And you got to gauge all of those, and it's very time consuming. It takes a lot from a person, but when you learn how to do it, it pays off in dividends over like many
Hmm.
iterations of an organization, because then the people underneath of that person, underneath of that supervisor, they're growing. And then you're not scrambling when, that person is ready to retire, going, who are we going to promote? Who's going to be next? Who's going to come up through here? Do we have to go outside and look for someone? I kind of joke and say, there's the commercials out about Indeed, and they say, we need to find somebody, or, we need Indeed. Indeed, you do. And it's like, Indeed, you don't, right? If you are developing the people inside of your organization the way that you should, if you're
Yeah.
leading and managing, if you're doing both of those in the appropriate way, when it comes time, you will have the next person ready inside of your organization to step up into the role that
Mhm.
is vacated by someone, leaving, whether they leave all of a sudden and you're just not expecting it, or they leave, there's two companies I'm working with right now that an owner is getting ready to retire in the next 5 years, and I'm working with them to get the next people ready to go for that organization. Another one, they just found out this week that one of the supervisors is going to retire either at the end of this year or the beginning of next year. And they're already starting to look and think like, who's the next person that can step into the here. Really, what I'm selling is peace of mind. I'm
Yeah.
selling peace of mind to owners and executives and operators inside of companies where they know that they have a system in place and processes ready that
Yeah.
are training up people throughout the organization for the next big change. And in operations driven organizations, and you and I have talked about this, but for listeners, right, and for watchers, it's coming. Like most of the people who are doing that, they are older. They are in their mid to late 50s. Some of them are in their late, mid to late 60s, and they're getting ready to retire. And we're going to have to hire this generation that we've started to say is entitled, and all this other stuff, and they don't know how to do these things. They don't know how to have the hard conversations. Well, they don't know because they've never been shown it. Like
Yeah.
we've created an environment in our modern day society that is overly supportive.
Hmm.
Everything is support, right? You and I grew up at a time when it was very much command and control, do what you're told right now, jump how high, midair, and that wasn't that great either, but
Right.
neither one of those extremes is good.
Yeah.
Having both the support and the challenge is what makes
Mhm.
an organization a place where people want to be.
Yeah. Well, and I think that's just so critical. And once again, I think what you just hit on is so important is, and I find this too, is so many people struggle not because they're incapable, but because they've never been modeled what to do
Right.
right. Nobody, and the problem is that the person before them didn't do it for that person. So it's like it's just this trickle down effect. And so, I think what I'm excited for your book to come out is you're giving people practical, applicable tools to kind of break that cycle, right? And start, even though it may feel challenging and hard at first, if you just start implementing and you really put it to action on a day-to-day basis, at some point it's kind of like riding a bike, right? Ride a bike, you fall down, you struggle, and then at some point it just becomes natural and you don't think about it anymore, right? I'm
Yeah.
my daughter is doing driver's training right now. She just got her
Oh
test,
gosh.
a month or so ago. And
Wow.
it's like every time we've had one of our kids go through that, I'm reminded how much we had to learn to drive a car
Right.
and what we don't think about after a while, right? And I
Right.
think that's what happens in leadership and management too is
And she's been riding in your car for a long time to get to
correct.
places. I know
Yeah,
all of the activities that your kids do. They have ridden in cars for a long time.
sure.
They have seen it in front of them. And to just expect that, well, they've been riding in a car, they should know how to drive a car. Like that, we
Yeah,
all know that's idiocy, right?
right.
That's crazy.
Yeah,
But then we do it inside of our companies.
yeah.
We expect, well, they've been here, they've seen everything that's going on. I should just be able to promote this person. And
Hmm.
I wrote an article, gosh, probably 5, 6 months ago now, that if we leave people to figure it out, eventually what they'll figure out is that they just need to go someplace else.
Ooh, wow. That stings.
Yeah. Well, you've
By the
met
way,
me.
John doesn't hold back people. No, but that's so true, right? Is that I think people feel when they feel valued, is when they're invested in and they're mentored and they're coached and they're
Yes.
they're given opportunities. And like you said, even when they're challenged, they if you can challenge in a way that it's for that person's good, it makes all the difference in the world about their loyalty
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
focus in their job.
Yeah. And I talk about it in that way in my book that as a supervisor, one of the biggest callings that we have is to serve the people that we lead, right? That we supervise.
Mhm.
But I don't mean that in the way that even servant leadership has become today, of just like that everything is nice and caring. Like I want to kill nice, like because niceness and kindness are two different things. Kindness says everything that needs to be said. Niceness may say 90% of what needs to be said, but it's going to leave out that last 10%. And that last 10% is where the gold generally lies. And
Mhm.
so that's a big thing that I teach supervisors is how to say it all. And that's how I talk about it. Like you just need to learn how to say it all.
Mhm.
Even if saying it all means, hey Chris, I'm kind of worried about how you're going to take this. I'm worried that you may get upset. I want you to know that I'm for you and that I'm telling you this because it's for your very best, for your highest good. And so here's the thing that I need to share with you, right? If you're fearful of something, just learn how to say it to the person that's in front of you. And most times, in fact, I don't think I've gotten any feedback from somebody who said I used that, I said it all to the people, and they got really mad and they stomped out. I don't think
Mhm.
anyone's ever said that
Yeah.
because people appreciate when we're like really honest with them, and honesty is kindness. It's
Mhm.
not niceness.
Mhm.
Niceness is I don't want you to feel bad. I don't want you to think that you've done anything wrong. I literally had a lady in one of the organizations I worked with who said to me, I would rather me be upset than anybody on my team, and so I'll take it all on myself. And I asked her, how does your husband feel about that? And she's like, what do you mean? I was like, what does he get from you by the time you get home? And she's like, well, he doesn't get the best of me. Well, no, of course he doesn't.
Yeah.
And any organization worth working for realizes that your personal life and your work life, that they all combine. We're not these dichotomous creatures that leave home at home and work at work. We come home from work and we talk about the things that happened, at work at home. And then we
Yeah.
go to work and we'll talk about things at work that happened at home. We do this. Everybody does this.
Right.
So that I think one of the beautiful things of the tools that I learned through Giant, and then some of the things that I have put into my book, and the way that all this stuff has flowed together, and I appreciate so much Jeremy Kubicek, who's the co-founder of Giant, who wrote the foreword for my book. I sent it to him. It's got like a lot of Giant information that's in there, and he put a stamp of approval on it. Like that's the whole idea of this, is that really um these principles work in every aspect of your life.
Mhm.
Like even for yourself personally, you have to know how to lead yourself and you have
Mhm.
to know how to manage yourself. And if you
Yeah.
don't know how to do both of those things, you might be creating your own personal chaos.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting you say that because I know, John, you and I have talked offline just how, as I've continued to morph and fine tune my magnetic leadership system, the first part is lead yourself.
Mhm.
And and in giant terms, it's know yourself to lead yourself. And
Right.
that's something I know I've heard you speak a lot about. And so I really feel like, if, that's a great place to start, right? Is begin to do this personally and then let it shift to leading others. And then ultimately that builds culture. And then
Right.
that becomes worth multiplying. And I think what happens in my observation is a lot of companies, a lot of teams, they want to jump from where we are to I want a healthy culture and I want to multiply leaders, but they haven't been leading themselves well and they haven't been leading others
Right.
well. And so it's like when you skip those first couple of phases, what you end up with is more of a toxic culture or or an inconsistent culture, and then you start
That's it.
multiplying things you really don't want.
Yeah. Yeah. It's that inconsistency. That's the big
Yeah,
one.
yeah.
Because they may do it for a week, but
Hmm.
will you continue it through a month? You may do it when times are easy, but can you do
Hmm.
it when times are hard?
Hmm.
Yeah. Consistency is the biggest thing.
Yeah, I've been telling people for last few years, it really hit me at some point that consistency is an X factor in leadership.
Oh,
Because if, what can people expect from you day after day, week after week, month after month, year after year, right? Like, and I think that, if people start to implement and apply the lessons that you're teaching in your book and it becomes their norm, that becomes that consistency. That is, then you can multiply that. Then you can truly
yeah.
build a culture around that. And that's what I think people do look for and they want to be a part of. So,
Yeah. Yeah. I
so
mean,
John,
we've
we're,
joked for years, right, about nobody's happy if mom ain't happy. Well, the same's true about dad, same true about boss,
yeah,
right?
yep, 100%.
And if it's that inconsistent and you don't know what you're showing up to, and there's been a lot of people I've talked to who they're like, man, their favorite team, my boss's favorite team, lost over the weekend. I wonder what they're going to be like on Monday. It's like that should not be a factor. They didn't play for that team. A lot of them, never even played a sport higher than high school.
Mhm.
That should have no factor in what you're going to show up to on Monday.
Yeah. But that takes maturity and growth, right? Personally. So we don't bring, like you said, that baggage from home or the weekend into the workplace that damages the team and the culture. So,
Yeah,
so John, where can people, A, find your book? Because now that it's released, and also
yeah.
B, how can they connect with you and learn more about what you do and the tools you offer?
Yeah. Well, finding my book's easy. You can just look up John D. Harney. I had to put a D in there, but John D. Harney. Or you can look up Lead Manage Win on Amazon. It's all on Amazon. It's out there by now, ready to go, and it's in three formats as of right now. There's the digital Kindle version, paperback, and hardcover. There's an audiobook that will be coming out later this year to partner along with that. But the book is available on Amazon as of right now. Fun.
I was saying you have a tool on your website too, don't you, that people can download to get some more information?
Yeah, yeah. And so I think communication is one of the biggest factors inside of organizations that just too many organizations don't communicate clearly. And one of the biggest places I see it is in one-on-one conversations is that they are very inconsistent. And so
Mhm.
creating a consistency inside of one-on-one conversations and making them more often than just the year-end review
Yeah.
because, this is March when you and I are having this conversation. We will remember at the end of the year that we had this conversation. We might remember that it was in March. It might take us a little while to go, yeah, when was that? Oh, it was right around the time that my book came out. Yeah, so somewhere like the beginning of March, right? We would remember that, but we wouldn't remember what we were feeling or anything else. We might just say, yeah, we had a good time talking on the podcast. And so I think that those reviews, those one-on-ones, they need to happen more consistently. Having a consistent flow of information that you're gathering from the people who are working inside of an organization that creates that consistency that we were just talking about. And so I created a tool. It's just called 2 questions to change your team. Anybody can download it if they go to johndharney.com/questions. So johndharney.com/questions. And you can download. It's a 2-page tool that I put together for these one-on-one conversations. The one page goes to the supervisor, and the supervisor can take that and they can um, give it, go through it for themselves to prepare for this one-on-one conversation. They give the other page to their employee, to the person who's reporting to them, and it lets that person be able to prepare for that meeting because, again, one of the things I found is that they'll schedule these meetings and then they just show up and they try to like shoot from the hip, or maybe the supervisor has some questions that they want to ask, but the other person's not been able to prepare for that meeting. And a majority of people aren't great on the fly of just talking about what's going on. They need a little time to prepare.
Yeah.
And so when there's preparation that's done ahead of time, these meetings can go down to 15 minutes per person. And so I say that this tool creates clarity, trust, and momentum in 15 minutes. You can have
Mm.
a meeting that creates clarity, trust, and momentum, and it'll only last 15 minutes. And so I offer that for free on my website if people go to johndharney.com /questions.
Awesome. Well, I will put that in the show notes as well so people can reach out to you. Excited for you. Congrats on the book. I know that
Thanks, man.
it's a labor of love, right? There's a lot of
It
work that
is.
you do.
It
And
is.
it's, I know for myself, finishing the manuscript, you think you're done with the book, and that's kind of just the beginning of the next several months of the
You
work.
told me that. You told me all of this stuff when we first started, and I heard most of it and it stuck with me, but it's one of those things you don't know until you know, and
Right.
then being in the middle of it and just like, is this ever going to end? And so yeah,
Yeah, and
really
I would be
glad for it
texting you
to
like, "How's the process going?" You're like, "I think
yeah,
we're moving here,"
I
So
think we're getting closer. Yeah. No, I appreciate everything that you gave me too, and the help that you gave to push us along the line. So you're as much to thank for this as anybody.
well, I'm super excited for you, and definitely be spreading the word about this book and sharing the links out there in the world. And thanks again for joining me today on this. I'm excited for you. I'm
Yeah.
excited for people
Thanks
to
for
read
having
your
me.
book and start to implement it and get those results of and saving that time and a lot of frustration. So we will see you guys next time.
Thanks.